And I'm just going to let people. Hang on, let me just type something in. Okay, here we go. I'm just letting them know we're going to have a conversation right after the video. Here we go.
Well, hello and welcome to the Fairy Glade. Close by the river, you can probably hear the river in the background. Overcast afternoon, winter. But the seasons don't make any difference at all to the unseen forest dwellers. And I have a little routine which I always go through when I come into the forest. Every time I come into this area here, I give thanks to the guardians of this land. I give thanks to the ancestors whose spirits are here. I also give thanks and acknowledge the little people, the unseen people, the patapaiarehi, the fairy folks, the elves, whatever you like to call them, the beings which are here. I also thank every living thing in the forest for allowing me to come to this special place. The birds and the insects, the animals, every tree that is present here, I give thanks to especially. And then I like to say thank you to all the waters that flow around this land, under this land, and flow within every plant and every tree and every living thing that is here. Every stone, every branch has residues of water in it. And this resonates with us as humans, with the water we have within. So when I do this little routine, as I like to call it when I come here, it's not a ritual. I do it, I ad-lib it, it changes sometimes. But it's acknowledging the unseen presence. And the unseen presence is unseen to me physically, but I hear and I know. And other people that I bring to this area here, they see and they hear and they share with me. We've had all sorts of explanations, we've had all sorts of descriptions given for what is here. And it's so exciting. And I know that when I come and talk that there is an acknowledgement. And I know that so often, as a lot of you would understand, that when we go to special places and we take photographs around about, and then we put them up on our computer when we get home, and we look at the foliage and we look at the leaves and we look at the ground and think, oh my gosh, look at that little face peering out from behind those leaves at me. I never saw it with the physical eye, but there was something there. So this is a place which is part of a fairy trail which comes from up the hill there. It goes right through on the fringes of this area here I've designated or called the Fairy Glade, across the main track there, down and across the river and up the other side. So this is just one of many, many fairy trails that are to be found throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand.
Gary Cook's in the house. He is the creator of that video. And I believe, based on what I hear when I listen to that video, I believe he's the creator of that fairy glade in some cosmic, paradoxical way. Oh, hang on.
That may be wherever you are at the moment. That's a great introduction. It's interesting to see that clip once again. And I think it's self-explanatory. You know, I'd just like to do a little preamble here. And first of all, some of you may hear a little music playing in the background, which I'll refer to later. And that is coming from our dear Peace Lily, Sabella. She's all plugged in here, and she's actually playing this music live as I'm talking to you, and we'll have a look at that shortly and just see how that goes.
Wow.
This is just, it's a whole other world. It's a whole other world. Because really what we have to realize that the world is not a machine. It is not mechanized. It is a living, breathing organism. And so much wisdom has been kept in trust to be communicated when the nature of human beings comes full circle once again, so we can become aware that humans are not the only form of life in the biosphere of this planet. And where you live is a world that abounds with many forms of life and intelligence. And I'm referring to the realms of plant consciousness, the elemental kingdoms, and of the fairy folk. And I wish to share with you ways and means of renewing your life by making connections with the world of nature, because your biggest roots are in nature. So that's my little intro, and we can probably sort of roll on from here if that's fine. Shall I just carry on chatting, or?
Yeah, keep on going.
All right, okay. I'm on a bit of a roll here, perhaps, yeah. So what if we were able to communicate with the wild things, and what message would they have to share with us? A new paradigm is actually emerging that recasts how we relate and understand nature. Much of this supported by new scientific evidence. Plants talk and listen to each other, and communication is crucial for their survival. And nature teaches us that collaboration is more important than competition. And this emerges with studies that have been done all around the world by scientists, that when trees and plants are in the forest or in the garden, they're living in their own little tight community, and that they have to learn to get on with each other. So often when we go into the forest or go into in the gardens, we'll see dozens of different plants, mosses, ferns, trees, all living in harmony, which I think is a great example to human beings. We seem to have lost a lot of these connections where humans can live in perfect harmony. I mean, we have gone so far as a race. We've as we think we've developed, but have we? Have we undeveloped? Because I go back to when we were tribal people, when we were hunter-gatherers and we were in small groups. And of course, this changed over a period of time as humans became more domesticated. We became agriculturists. We raised animals instead of hunting them. So we used to be a very tribal people and live in very, very compact units. So likewise, when we go into the forest or the garden, we are seeing what we were many, many generations ago still going on in the world of nature. And often when we see movies which show underwater scenes, and we see all these beautiful colored fish swimming around the reefs and what have you, and we look and we'll see probably 10 or 20 different species of fish all gathered around the reef there, swimming around, in and out, doing what they do, getting on with life, all the different colors, and occasionally a big gray shark will sweep in and go through them, not always looking for food, but perhaps grazing, but then again, just moving through. So this is something that we've got to realize, that how understanding the intrinsic intelligence of nature leads us to a greater appreciation of our spiritual capabilities. And we must remember that we are not in control of nature, rather that we must nurture nature. And becoming attentive to the intelligence and language of plants requires analogical thinking and an imaginal perceptual capability that all of us can develop. So this is the path that my research has been taking me for many, many years. It's very broad in its approach. it may seem to some people, but everything is interconnected that I look at. So whether I'm looking at the moss growing on the ground, or whether I'm looking at the fact that there is a moss elemental with that plant, or whether I am not observing but know that passing by is a little elf or a fairy or a gnome or dwarf, whatever the case may be. So I'm looking at the interrelationships, and I feel that a big opening for people is, as I'm going to be sharing with you soon, music of the plants. The fact that all plants and trees, all living things, have a song. They have a means, and we have given them a means of expressing the song with modern technology. So I have been profoundly affected in my recent research by the effect that plant intelligence has had on my life. It's interesting, and I guess, Todd, that the times that you walk in your forest and along your creek at home there, you, I know, have shared with me the feelings that you get and the connections that you also make. And a lot of people viewing this will also be nodding their heads and sort of saying, wow, we know of these connections. But there is a way now that you can take them even deeper and enliven these connections. And it's so with all my research into plant consciousness, plant intelligence, music of the plants, I realized that all of this was pointing me towards what I call the middle realms. Okay, we live in very much in this dimensional world that we are in at the moment. We are aware that there are other life forms out there. We are aware there are other energies out there, entities, whether they are coming in from the cosmos and joining us here on the earth, or whether they are already here living in a parallel existence alongside us. So these are places that have always been there, but for a long time not recognized or acknowledged. And this is a place when we just take that step, and it's not a big step either, and it can be a step which can be taken with meditation, contemplation, walking in the forest. I'm a true believer in the modern concept of forest bathing, which is to walk amongst trees and plants and imbibe of the energy and the medicine that they can give. These are places where the wonders of the natural world are revealed. So, and these were places that years ago I discovered that I had a fairy elemental guide. I mean, as a child, I was brought up in a Christian home and went to Sunday schools and did the Bible classes and became aware of angels. And I've always had the concept that perhaps there are guardian angels. But now I know that we all have a guardian elemental being. And perhaps at some time in the past, with the input of Christianity, the elemental being transmogrified into an angel. So scientists are now saying too that we share our planet with many other domains of life. And as I said, like the realms of fairies and owls. And these realms are just beyond the proverbial garden wall. They're as close as stepping out into your garden. They're as close as sitting in your home on a winter's evening with your potted plant. They're as close as when you tend your vegetable garden, your vegetable plot. And now it seems to us that these so-called zones, we may well be the curiosities. I have a feeling that I wonder when the elemental beings become aware of humans, or whether they become aware of the human elemental, or whether the fairies become aware of humans, and do they regard us as curiosities, the ones that are here and to live in a mystical zone. I see you chuckle there, Todd, and I guess
I've always had this I've always had this chuckle, yeah, with the reawakening I had 10 years ago, which is basically that we're probably going to get to the end of the journey and find out we were the low species on the totem pole. Everything's been waiting on us. Yeah. Yeah. But what you said about being in nature, I mean, people talk about grounding, and I'm blessed to have a dry riverbed behind me. It had water in it in the last week, which was kind of cool. It added to it. But yeah, just even walking outside, like I did before this show, after the last show, and I connected with three birds and the trees, of course. The trees to me are everything. But yeah, and I can't tell you I got a download specifically, or I heard exactly what the birds were saying. I kind of felt it, but it was it's like taking a nap. Like you come out of it a little more balanced, a little more, centered for, for the moment.
It's interesting you say about the birds too, because if we listen to the bird's song, if we can spend a moment, and we are fortunate to be able to see the bird singing on the branch of the tree, and we'll hear their song, and we're watching closely, and we'll see their little throats trilling away there. And suddenly the song will cease, and yet the beak is wide open and the little throat is still trilling. And so they are singing notes which we as humans cannot hear. So we only hear part of the bird song, which is amazing. And with the song of the birds, Todd, scientists have come up with some interesting research on the value of bird song to the plants and the trees, because the dawn chorus, when that commences before the rising of the sun, the vibration of the bird song affects all the plants and trees within hearing. And it's like an early alarm system that calls the plants to, come on, time to wake up. The new day is upon us. And interestingly enough, too, infrared and time-lapse photography has now shown that plants actually, and trees go to sleep at nights, because what they've been able to detect with the time-lapse is the fact that trees' branches will start to droop like this, and they'll go down anywhere between 5 and 10 centimeters. So the whole tree goes into repose at night in the darkness. And then just on dawn and before the sun rises, they start to come up again. It is something which is so imperceptible that we wouldn't be able to see it as such, the movement with the naked eye. But there we have the beauty of the bird song and the importance it has in nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I listened to three last night when I walked out there. There was two going, and they were different species. And then their third one came in, it was another different species. They all had different songs.
Yeah.
And their songs individually were, carrying a message. And then the way they collaborated, added to it. Right.
Yeah. Encounters with these other beings, birds and animals, and even a tadpole, are very important, as they all carry messages. And and the thing is that the planet on which we live, the planet Earth, 99% of all life on the planet is plant life. This is scientifically proven now. So within the 1%, all other life forms exist. And that includes humans and all the animals and birds and fish and all the little creepy crawly insects and things like that. 1%. So we actually live on a plant planet, which I find so fascinating. And this means that our position on the planet as humans is so infinitesimal, and yet we as humans have had an amazing impact on the life on the planet, but also we as humans have made incredible technological advancements. But in doing so, of course, whether we look at the age of iron and steam or go back to the time of iron and brass and copper and move our way up, we've gone through that very heavy industrial age where we're still seeing the remnants of that, where chimneys still belch out toxic smoke and things like that. But we're now in the age of technology. And it is with this technology that we are able, or it is enabling us, to actually make connections with nature on a different level altogether. And I feel that this is where we should be. And yet, it is wonderful, though, because as humans, we seek to become inwardly focused to aid our soul journey through life. And yet the answers to the questions and queries we have are often out there. They're not in here. We have to sometimes seek the answers out there. And this is why joining with nature and acknowledging the elementals and the fairy realms, we're making connections with another aspect of life in the biosphere of this planet that we all share.
Yeah. Yeah. We had this brother Seth on the show prior, and he was talking about this friend of his who works with water, like Dr. Emoto,
Yeah.
but is experiencing things that are more expanded or on a macro level as opposed to a petri dish, right? And one of those things was she was speaking to, I guess, a tray of water or something, and I don't know for how long. And she asked the water, she developed a connection, and then asked the water what her name was, and and then it froze, and in the ice was her name that was actually even written in her handwriting, like the way her signature was. So I was just postulating with my friend, and now that you're bringing this up, there's no coincidences. Uh, the interaction and the product of that conscious interaction with nature, be it a plant or water, is producing something. And maybe this is at, let's just say, a low level, but everything keeps expanding in this energy. And why wouldn't that? So I wonder what kind of experience or product of conscious integration with plants and trees, what that could look like in our physical experience.
Oh my gosh, it's interesting. I love you bringing in the aspects of water and the work that Masoto did. And we've often heard over the years where people have pronounced that water has a memory. It remembers everything. Within each molecule of water, there is a memory. And there was an experiment carried out about 8 or 9 years ago at a German university. I forget the name of the professor. And he was doing laboratory experiments to see whether or not water actually did have memory. So they managed to gain some pure spring water, actually from the source of the Danube River, way up in the mountains where it comes straight from the mountains. They brought the pure water back to their laboratories in Germany and started to experiment. And one of the first things they did had a beaker of water, and they took a flower, and I think it was a rose by the what I'm remembering, and they dipped the rose into the beaker of water, left it immersed there for a while, then took it out carefully. Then they put a little pipette in and drew out a little tiny bit of water, took this across to a slide they'd prepared, put one drop of water on the slide, and put it under a very powerful microscope. And the thing which emerged, which amazed them and they photographed, was within that drop of water under the microscope was the perfect shape and image of the flower that immersed in the water. Now that is available as a YouTube clip, so I'm sorry I can't give you the names of the university or professor.
I mean, that just shows you the power of ritual. You know, I mean,
yes,
of conscious ritual, which I guess could involve something that's, you know, known and practiced among many people. But to me, it's intuitive. It's conscious intention. You know, it's, I don't know what you call it, but it's almost like a creative artistic space of both gratitude and reverence in the expression of it. I mean, I think we're moving into a territory, or we're in a territory, in a space now where the creativity, somebody was saying that on an earlier show, the creativity is really going to take off.
Oh, you're right, creativity. And I just might give you a little secret insight into something I've been experimenting with for a couple of years. And this was prompted by a very interesting, I'll tell you this little story. I love sharing this with you. 8 years ago, when I started to look into plant music, and I bought my first device in from a group of people in Italy, and this was a little electronic device that allowed me to connect to plants. Okay, and from this I was able to produce musical notes, or the plant produced musical notes. We'll go into that in a little more detail later. So I was experimenting with this, and then one day a beautiful Maori kaumatawa, or elder, came to visit me. And he was very interested in the work I was doing with plants, and particularly with a little plant called the kawakawa, which is a tree-like bush which grows in the forest of New Zealand. And kawakawa is an incredible medicinal plant. And it is believed that there are certain attributes to the leaves and to the bark and to the roots and things like this, which can help in healing. And he listened to my recording I made of the kawakawa plants. And he was just amazed at what he was hearing and how he was personally interpreting this. So away he went. And then 10 days later, he phoned to come and visit again. He was on his way. He'd been on a journey and he was on his way back home. And he said, I just came to talk to you more about kawakawa and the plant and what the music that is coming from the plant means, and how he felt listening to the recording I gave him opened up a whole new world of well-being and peace and harmony. And then as he was leaving, he said, I think what you have to do next is experiment with the sound of water. And I thought, oh, that's okay, water. Because I have little electrodes that I put on the leaves of plants or on the moss. And how on earth would I do this with water? So I put it away into the too hard box. But a little later, I experimented. And I put my contacts into the little spring we have at home, the fairy springs. And they were under the water, just dangling in the water. And these are not mics, they're not little microphones. They were not picking up the sound that water naturally makes as it ripples over the rocks and in a little waterfalls. You will love the sound of water. But then I found that I was actually picking up the energy of the water and reproducing it through my little speaker. And here I was listening to the sound that music makes, which in so many ways was not dissimilar to the sounds coming from plants. So this is something I've been experimenting with, and I hope to take it further. It's so interesting we're talking about water here, and I've always thought that, Todd, that water in the work that I'm doing, which encompasses plants and beings on the planet, that a great connector with the plants and all living creatures is water. Because as we know, humans are 70 to 80% water. Every other animal has invertebrate, insect, bird has water within it. Every tree and plant has water. Every stone has water. We can look at what we might call an inert stone, but inside it, if you look through a powerful electron microscope into stone, if you slice it through, there are little fibrils there which contain water. So water exists everywhere. And I feel that this is a resonance which occurs between humans and all other things on the planet. And this is why we can make these connections. So there's been a lot of research done, Todd, to looking at the effect that all these things have if we're open to them. A lot of scientific research done to see if plants respond to human emotions. And I've understood this, as have shamans for countless generations. Shamans have always understood the language of plants. That is very, very much a great part of the work that they do. Now, the language of plants. Gosh, I'm just sort of going with a bit of a flow here. So,
Go
okay,
for
if I
it.
carry on, right.
Go for it.
Now, in a forest, below the ground, all the trees are interconnected. And I used to think that trees were interconnected by their roots. But no, the roots may come close to each other, but it is strands of fungi, a mycelium, which is below the surface. And I may have mentioned this last time I spoke to you. And this connects all plants to one another so they can communicate and work together. Plants are not individual, they interact with each other. So
Let me ask you, I want to ask you a question real quick, but keep going. That fungi,
yeah,
that green, to me, and I can't see the elemental world like you can, but I can sense it. There's not a lot of visual, but one thing that's always there is that fungi, that algae. It's
yes.
always there. I mean, anytime I get around it, I feel the fairies and, you know, all of that.
I know. Gosh, Todd. I mean, we're moving into realms with this little chat, which are getting deeper and deeper too. And we're just starting to reveal, I mean, the possible, not the possible, the probable interconnectedness between everything. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, this is amazing. And now plants, we have a lot to learn from plants. They instruct us through their interdependence with the environment, through direct transmission conveyed by the feeling for the plants or by their music. And I feel that their music that I'm recording conveys a lot to us. Now, the music that you're hearing in the background coming from the peace lily sitting on the table beside me, which I'll just swing my camera around because at the moment I've just got this here. So bear with me and you'll just look at peace lily here. There she is. You may see some little contacts on her leaf. Can you see that, Todd?
Yes. Is that what we're listening to?
She is playing now with my little devices, which I won't tilt the camera to them, but I've got them all set up here, little MIDI devices and computer devices. So she is playing this music while we're talking. Now, peacefully, her name is Sabella. She and I have been working together now for 7 years. And she's a wonderful plant. She performs or shares her music every time I ask her or connect with her. And she is a plant that has traveled all over places within the North Island of New Zealand with me for a number of years as I have demonstrated plant music and spoken about the world of plants. And she travels with me, and she's my travel companion. and she sits in the back seat with me with a little seat belt on, and away we go. And when I do my presentation, she plays beautifully. So she's well, not trained at all, because one doesn't have to train a plant. A plant does this. And although some plants that I have connected with over the years have not necessarily responded immediately to my desire to make music with them. Some trees in the forest I've had to go back to 2 or 3 times and talk to them and sort of say, would you mind sharing your song with us? So I guess what I've got to put in here, Todd, is the fact that what on earth am I doing? What are these devices? I do have a number of things put up on my YouTube platform, which will share with people the devices. There are 2 or 3 different devices that one can use. But in essence, what it's doing, it's picking up little electrical impulses generated within the plant or the tree. Now, all plants and trees, being living entities, are producing energy as they go through the photosynthesis, where they're bringing down the sunlight, bringing in the carbons to convert into plant sugar, to feed themselves and feed the microcilium. And all the actions which go on in the trunks and the branches and in the leaves, it's like a heart pumping. And so this is going on all the time, in and out, bringing in the carbon, pumping out the oxygen that we all need and breathe. And this is creating a form of static electricity, which these devices that I place on the leaves of the plants or on the trunks or the branches pick up these little bursts and then convert them into a sequence of musical notes. So in essence, what we're able to do here, Todd, is give plants and trees a musical instrument that they can play. So therefore, we have another means of communicating with them, and a means that allows them to communicate with us. Now, plants and trees do communicate with us, as you know yourself, and you've experienced this. You go into a forest or a place where there's a big tree, and it's a tree that you feel is quite important to you, and we'll go and place our palms of our hands on the tree, or we'll be the tree hugger, which is wonderful. And then sometimes, of course, we will talk to the tree quite openly, or just with our minds. And it has been known, and it's something I've experienced too, that if one has a query which is to do with nature, to do with getting a deeper understanding of the natural world, you can ask this of the tree. And so often then an answer will come back from the tree, but one has to be patient, because the trees don't move, their thought or their internal patterns don't move as fast as a human mind. Trees are much slower. You may remember the Ents out of the Lord of the Rings, the big trees which walked around.
Yes.
It came to the time they had to make a decision how long it took them.
Right.
Tolkien captured that very, very well indeed. So you can have a conversation with the tree, but you have to be prepared to hang out with the tree for a while,
Right.
while the tree gets back to you. But one thing I love to share, if I can just put in at this point, Todd, is whenever I go into the forest at home here, we have a native forest on our land. I stop and I will talk to the trees as I go in. And there's one tree I will talk to, and I know that when I talk to this tree, that my conversation will be carried right throughout the forest to every other tree there, connected through the mycelium. So, and then I will give a blessing to the tree and to the forest and all the unseen beings that are around me, and to the ancestors and to the ancient guardians of the land. And then I'll go through and acknowledge all the living things, seen and unseen. That's the insects above the ground and below the ground, the birds, the animals, every tree and every plant, the waters and the river and the spring which flow through our land. I'll acknowledge all of these. And then when I've done this acknowledgement and just sort of established the fact that I'm here to understand and here to share and to honor you, I will wait for a response. And standing there, a response will come. Now, one can actually experience this for themselves when the very first time they go into an area to talk to a tree, or there's a tree that they wish to have a conversation with. So you stand there and you chat to the tree in whatever way you feel. And I think it is wonderful to actually not take all the worldly woes and troubles which are besetting you at the moment. Just leave those behind you. Go into the forest with an open heart and open mind. Stand there with your eyes closed and say a few kind words. You don't have to say much. And just stand there for a while. Then when you open your eyes, you are ready to be aware of a response which will be coming from nature. And it may be just a simple thing, like suddenly a leaf will fall from a tree just nearby, and it'll just go down to the ground. Look upon this as a response. It may be too that the place that you have paused on this little walk in the forest, there is a little mossy bank beside you, and there is water dripping down there. And suddenly you become aware of the drip, drip, drip of the water, something you hadn't heard before, because your senses, your five external senses, are magnified by the fact you had your eyes closed, your ears sealed off, and now you've opened them up. So then you may be aware of the song of a bird, which could have well been sitting on the branch from the whole time you had arrived, and you look up and there is a bird singing. Wow. Then, in the distance, you may hear the sound of laughter, children's laughter. And it may just go through your mind, wow, I'm sort of a long way from anywhere. Where are those children? The chances are that is the patapairehi. That is the sound of the fairy folk of the forest playing. Distant laughter, which sounds like children's laughter. And then the ultimate thing which may occur while you're standing there is suddenly, out of nowhere, a breeze will come round and just go whoop around. Wow, just the lightest, slightest of breezes, and it's gone. And that is what we call the wairua. That is the spirit of the land. That is the spirit touching you. So these are little elements which, if we stand for a while as we go into the forest, we can experience these things, and we know a connection has been made, and we know that nature has responded to us. So it just opens us. It is a time to listen. If we listen, we will hear. And within nature, there is always a guide to our own, to an awakening and a transformation. There is a great consciousness within the forests and the gardens. There's even a consciousness around your potted plant in the little pedestal on the lounge in your home. There is a consciousness in the little pots you have on your veranda growing herbs. Never underestimate that consciousness. It's so close. And as we grow more sensitive to the way plants communicate with us, we encounter the depths of their wisdom. And we become more capable of receiving the many kinds of well-being that they have to offer. And that is the thing. There is a well-being comes from listening to the music of the plants. There is a well-being which comes of walking in the garden, even if it is only in your own backyard. There is a well-being coming from when we take a journey to the park down the road or to a forest and we walk. And so, as has been researched, Todd, that If we need an energy boost, just sit under a tree and smelling the distinct organic aroma of growing trees and plants, listening to soothing sounds of nature, like the rustling of leaves, stimulates the brain's frontal lobes and increases the production of energy boosting beta waves, which literally double your energy levels. So just sitting and listening to the sounds of the forest, as subtle as they may be, just the rustling of the wind. So we're all highly connected organisms, and we share with everything that exists or grows in the biosphere of this planet. This is the wonder of it. We don't have to have what I have here with the music of the plants, which is just a wonder to me and something I love to share with people. We just take ourselves, we take our spirit with us. We take our fingers, we put them on the branch, and we touch them. And there's nothing better, as you know too, Todd, that on a spring or summer day to go out and lay on the grass and just to soak it up. Because laying on the grass, we've got all these ions of energy coming up out of the earth, coming through the blades of grass. So these are energetic things we can do at home. It's and also another way to share an amazing life going on within the tree, the trunk of a tree, if we can find a reasonable sized tree, to sit up against it and put our back against the tree and just allow the energy of the tree, which is flowing up and down behind us, to enter into all the chakras in our body and to feel that flow. And then another thing which is a wonder to do is to lie on the ground at the base of the tree. And you can do this either with your feet, barefoot would be best, into the trunk of the tree, or with your head just touching the trunk of the tree. And you lay there with your eyes open and you look up the trunk of the tree and you look into the canopy and you're seeing other things that you've never seen before. You're seeing shapes and forms of various trees which are in close proximity. Their branches not intertwining, not touching, but so close to each other, just keeping the little distance in between. There you can then observe the movement in the canopy of a tree, which you're not aware of down on the ground. Little breezes are moving the branches around constantly. So these are things that we can actually embark upon so simply when we're in our own gardens or in the forest with the trees. Just open yourselves up to this natural energy.
Man. So we had a little mix up on the schedule, and not only was the show that was supposed to start an hour ago didn't show up because they thought that we were doing it in 5 minutes because of the time change. And then you showed up a day early on my calendar, but we still have another slot with your name on it for tomorrow at the same time if you want to. And as I said, that there's 111 people in the house. So synchronicities. But
I think that is wonderful. Same time tomorrow.
Yeah.
Todd, look, thank you for slotting me in today. We're just, talk about synchronicity and the way things happen. My gosh.
that's the way it's going.
So I'll sign off now.
It's crazy.
And,
that's the way it's going now. Yeah.
Just to check once more, you could just hear the background music quite well without it being too loud or too intrusive.
It's perfect. It's like a constant meditation.
It is, and that's why you might notice I kept drooping off as if I was going to sleep. Okay, my friend. Well, we've got a couple of minutes.
We'll see you tomorrow, same bat time.
See you tomorrow, same time. Thanks for that. All the very best. Love to you out there.
Peace out.